Opening on the concept sketch. How cool is that? I'm Irene, and this is my studio. What's going on here? It's the second in my Autumn Chills collection of paintings. These are mixed media pieces using colored pencil, watercolor, and gouache. That last one, Gouache, is relatively new to me, so this series has been helping me get familiar with the medium. Just like in the previous skull painting, I started with a colored pencil sketch on watercolor paper. This is Arches Cold Press. I'd slipped a sheet of black paper underneath just to change things up and add a bit of visual interest. I can manage scraggly trees, but trees with leaves? Beyond me at this time. It's on my future painting challenges list, though. One of my favorite ways to indulge in the season is to visit Rogers Gardens. Well, their YouTube channel anyway. As they're in Newport Beach, California, it's too far away for us to drive to. Sure, we have our own local garden centers, but once we discovered that Rogers Gardens does a fantastic annual Halloween boutique, we've been like, maybe we should move to Southern California. I mean, they've got Rogers Gardens, Disneyland, and In-N-Out Burgers. The only thing holding us back is the high cost of living. Oh, and the hot and sunny climate. As a lifelong Washingtonian, I can't handle that. Being deprived of a good dose of general grayness, I could shrivel up and crumble to dust. Bummer. So I was watching Rogers Gardens' new Halloween boutique video on their channel, and this time it's a nightmare theme. And that includes elements from the Nightmare Before Christmas. Producer Mike is a big fan of that movie. Seriously, he came this close to attending his daughter's wedding in a Jack Skellington black and white striped jacket. So we both were very excited to see that one of our favorite YouTubers, Justin Scard, featured the place in a recent video. So we got to see a good 20 minutes or so of walkthrough footage. It was the next best thing to being there. I used 3 colors from my Fall Feels watercolor palette: quinacridone violet, blue indanthrine, and Joseph Z's warm gray. If you're curious about the colors and brands in my Fall Feels palette, check out the link in the description and/or in the upper corner. Since this is an evening scene and I planned to add the moon in gouache, I went ahead and painted a dark wash as the first layer, and that's the only watercolor work on this piece. Yep, I used all 3 colors there. That pillar candle has a wonderful scent called Mexican Pumpkin. Talk about fall feels. That thing makes me want to whip up a batch of seasonal goodies. If you ever feel as if you're autumn deprived, just go to Pinterest and ogle the images of caramel apple cider, roasted pumpkin soup, and homemade ginger cookies. Speaking of goodies, last night I caught episode 1 in the latest round of the Great British Baking Show. Is it too soon to join Team Shabira? She had me at caramel bombs. But I have a question. Did they really dock the Scot for his piping on the red velvet cake? I mean, I get that the technical challenge has strict parameters, but surely there's still room for creativity. But that's the artist in me speaking, of course. All of that, not enough filling, not enough height, and too much crumb would send me right into a conniption. That's quite a pale mix of yellow and white for the moon. I decided to go thin at first, and I liked the effect, so I worked it with the brush, moving the paint around and lifting where needed. That allowed the undertone to show through in spots, creating a subtly cratered surface. It worked great. Producer Mike has spent many years assembling a miniature Halloween village, and it's on display by the fireplace so we can enjoy it all year round. Most of it is from the Lee Max Spooky Town collection, and even though we aren't able to add a new piece every year, we love to see the new items displayed at Michael's craft store. Unfortunately, our Michaels did not set up their village this season. Boo! That's one of the things we look forward to every fall, so we were pretty bummed out. Until producer Mike went through our fall decor stashed in the garage and pulled out a spooky village box from a couple of years ago that he'd forgotten about. Yeah, our frowns turned upside down real quick. Now we have to figure out how to fit it into the rest of the village. And yes, it does have a graveyard. For the foreground, I'd planned a solid color silhouette, so that's how I started that part. But then I realized that was going to be a bit boring. Also, I had come in with too much paint, so I tried to spread it around more. In the process, I went a little too far and began lifting more than intended. But once again, I liked the effect, so I continued to lift, and that made for an interesting, distressed appearance. Painting this piece got me thinking about graveyards on film, specifically the scene from Night of the Living Dead, the one where two siblings are visiting a cemetery and the immature brother taunts his unhappy sister about the possibility of the undead. "They're coming to get you, Barbara." Producer Mike and I watch Return of the Living Dead nearly every Halloween. It's silly and fun and gross and full of 1980s cheesiness. Rick Seaback, who's made a lot of food documentaries, did one on cemeteries about 20 years ago. I don't remember much, but I recall some lovely funerary stonework. Believe it or not, people in Victorian times treated cemeteries more like parks and would sometimes have picnics among the headstones. I like that idea and kinda wish we could do that these days. Of course, I would be respectful and pick up after myself. Our closest cemetery has lovely, natural-looking grounds with plenty of large, shady trees. Some years ago, producer Mike worked a full weekend there. That's right, he actually got to dig a grave. How many people can say that? Setting up for the service and clearing up afterward were also part of the job. You might be wondering, was that on his bucket list or something? Not really, no. But we were broke at the time, and he had to pay off a traffic ticket through community service. He was glad to do it, as it was a novel experience and makes a cool story to spring at parties. And on that note, how about some mood music here? Don't go running off. I'll be back in about 2 minutes. I've drawn enough bat silhouettes in my lifetime, so it's not hard, at least at this small scale. Simply suggesting the shape is enough. No details required. Yes, I admit this is a very simple composition. In fact, this entire Autumn Chills series was meant to be basic spooky imagery. But the first one, the skull, turned out to be unexpectedly involved. We're near the end now. The only thing left is some bleed-proof white medium that I dabbed onto the moon in an effort to add depth. Not sure it really worked, but on the whole, I'm pleased with the results. And now I have another 5x7 piece to slide into my 5x7 folio. I'm happy to share this mixed media painting. In fact, I'm shivering in my slippers just looking at it. Are you feeling that brisk breeze? Eyes watching from the darkness? Skeletal fingers grabbing your ankle? Until next time, remember, arting keeps the ghouls away. I just made that up. But if people repeat it enough, maybe. And stay artsy, my fiends.